Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane Q&A video for you today. Thanks very much for your comments and questions. I see them all. I've noticed a few people have asked where the answer is to their question that they sent ages ago, so apologies for not getting around to everybody, but I definitely will, even if I have to go on for the next 20 years. And thanks for your kind comments and questions about my GSX-R 750. What a bike. It's nearly there. I've been on my travels. I've been riding a fabulous Honda GB 350S, which you can read all about in MCN online and on a YouTube video, which is done really well. So I guess that these kind of 400s, these affordable 400s, are striking a bit of a nerve at the moment. And you know, it's nice to see that there's more choice other than just mega expensive, mega powerful bikes out there. I've also been doing a group test of big adventure bikes in Sicily with the BMW R1300 GS, KTM 1290 Super Duke Adventure S, Super Adventure S, no 1390 yet. Triumph Tiger 1200 GT Pro and Ducati Multistrada V4S. So that was good. And then also we went to the Seville circuit to ride the new Ducati Panigale V2, which you can see all of that in MCN very soon and on video. So why don't we crack on with some questions, and let's have a look at the first one. So this is from WeJock13. With regard to modern day electronics, I own an M1000R. I can't clutch up a wheelie, but the M1000 pops the front wheel up for fun on the power without even trying, as you know. My question is, can I rely on the anti-wheelie to hold the front wheel down at a height, or is it still likely to flip? I cover the rear brake just in case, but I don't really have the confidence or knowledge to lean on or trust the electronics. Can I trust the electronics? Awesome channel, by the way, with real world device. Thank you very much. Well, yeah, an M1000R is born to wheelie. You know, naked super bike with 200 horsepower that's going to wheelie all day long. It's got anti-wheelie, and the anti-wheelie works on a gyro with throttle position and wheel speed sensors and all the rest of it. And it's quite reliable. But what I'd say with all wheelie devices, all anti-wheelie devices, they're all designed to stop wheelies getting out of control on the track. So the way the system works and recognises the rider's behaviour is that they'll come out of a corner and they'll be on constant throttle or accelerating, and then the front wheel will come up and you're still accelerating consistently against the electronics. And then with a lot of bikes, including the M1000, you can set the wheelie control so it's very low and it goes up in stages. The KTM that I had last year, the Super Duke, I think it was in 5 stages of height. So that usually is pretty foolproof and reliable. And on track, it saves you a lot of effort trying to climb over the front wheel, use the back brake, feather the throttle, all that kind of stuff. To use anti-wheelie as a kind of a wheeling anti-wheelie device, you know, clutching one up on the road or whatever, I've found that they're quite inconsistent because they're not really designed to work like that. So for example, when I was testing my Super Duke last year, if I was to clutch up a wheelie, then the speed the bike came up at, the electronics can't catch it if you come up really fast, and there's no brake on the electronics. It just basically cuts the power. So if you absolutely flick it up in the air, the bike's just going to continue backwards on momentum and you will need to back brake it. But that's if you're being really aggressive with the clutch and the throttle. And the other thing is, if you try to wheelie and it gets a little bit scary and you ease off and then come back on again, sometimes the electronics kind of reset because you're not accelerating consistently against the electronics. So you may find suddenly you've got no wheelie control. So really using anti-wheelie electronics to try and wheelie, I wouldn't really recommend. We did a how to wheelie video on MCN ages ago, which has got millions of views, and sort of the same drills sort of still apply when it comes to wheeling. It's just to learn to wheelie on a push bike. I think that's probably the safest way to do it because the balance point feels the same. But if you're going to do it on a motorbike, then it's a question of just getting used to a very low wheelie in first gear. Just get used to the violence of the acceleration that it actually dishes out to want a wheelie. And then as the wheelie starts to come up and up and up, you start to get that feeling. But like anything with bikes, just start really, really slowly. You know, if you're instigating something, like for example, Ron Haslam always used to say at the Haslam school, if you're trying to make the bike slide, if it slides, you're ready for it. If you're not trying to make it slide and it does slide, you're not going to be able to catch it. And it's almost the same with a wheelie. If you're instigating getting the front wheel up and it comes up a little bit too fast, you can quickly ease off. But yeah, baby steps when it comes to wheeling. And to be honest, an M1000R is quite difficult to wheelie. Even I find that. A bike like that's designed to be stable, so it's got quite a long swing arm, so it does this thing where it will come up relatively easy, then it kind of gets stuck at a shallow angle, and then suddenly once it gets past that angle it goes woof. So you've got to be ready for it. And the other thing is that with its wings, it's hard to steer when you're on the back wheel. It stays absolutely stable like an airplane on the back wheel. So I would just do little hovering wheelies on the M1000R. Maybe learn to do some crossed up wheelies. They look really cool. But yeah, I'm sure the manufacturers could design a device that will actually let you wheelie, but it's probably not politically correct for them to do so. So you'll probably never ever see it. But thanks very much for the question. So next is from Lance Quilter 4425. Hi Nevesy, I'm looking to get back into biking after a 3-year hiatus caused by a nasty accident. Sorry to hear about that. In these videos you cover bikes new and old. What bike would you recommend on a budget of 5k? Looking to tick the boxes I never quite managed to the first time around. Mainly Spa and Nürburgring, but with a limited range of movement of my left ankle and knees that start to show their age. It can't be too cramped. I'm 6 foot, medium build. Keep the videos coming, content is great. Thank you very much. Well, I'm in the same boat as you. My knees and legs and everything are absolutely knackered, so I don't like small cramped bikes either. So I would say that the perfect bike for you would be a super naked, not a sports bike that's going to leave you too kind of cramped. Super naked is great for touring. Stick a tank bag on the tank. It's really comfortable for touring. And then they're brilliant around the track. They're not quite as good as a race rep because you're not right over the front, but they're sort of 85–90% as good as a race rep. Obviously the wind's trying to peel you off the back of the bike all the time. But for Spa and a Nürburgring, it'd be absolutely fine. And riding those tracks, it's not really about trying to set lap times, it's the experience, because those are two of the best, most awe-inspiring tracks in the world. So 2 bikes come to mind. The first one would be a street triple, which you can pick up for that kind of price. Not too cramped, very capable. That 675 engine or a 765 if you get a newer one. It's got loads of grunt, loads of real world grunt. It's going to be fantastic around the track. But it, you know, being 6 foot, it may be a tiny bit too small for you. So I would say that a big capacity super naked would probably be better. And although you probably would need to spend about 6 grand, the most spacious of all the super nakeds is the MT10 by a long way. And the MT10 is absolutely fantastic. Great at touring, not very good on fuel. Fuel economy is pretty bad. But wow, what fun. You know, the noise the engine makes, that cross-plane crank engine, fantastic handling, you know, put good tyres on it. You're not going to struggle around the track, and really, really good fun. And born to wheelie as well. So that would be my recommendation. Thanks very much for your question. Right then, next is from Gazi P the Sheep. Gazeep the Sheep. First, thanks for doing these videos, no problem. Really look forward to each new episode. Just came back from a road trip and wondered what your best tips are for comfort on long days in the saddle. My go-to move is dangling my leg just above the tarmac to give a bit of stretch and then alternate. Well, yeah, in a nutshell, that's all you can really do. I mean, prevention is better than cure. You know, get yourself a comfortable bike in the first place. I mean, two of the standout comfortable bikes that I've ridden in recent times is a Triumph Tiger 1200 long-termer that I had a couple of years ago, and the KTM Super Duke 1290 or 1390 that I had last year, and the 1290 will be the same. They're really roomy and surprisingly comfortable. And for me, kind of super nakeds are comfortable because your weight spread quite evenly. There's not too much weight on your wrists or your bum or your legs or your knees. It's all very nicely spread. Sometimes on upright touring bikes, it can give you a bad back because you're mainly down sitting on your coccyx. And in terms of what do you do to stop your sore bum and stretch your legs, yeah, exactly the same, dangle my leg. Most bikes, I've got really long legs, so I can't just dangle a leg because it catches on the floor. So I'll hang off to one side as if I'm on the racetrack, and then put my opposite leg down on the floor. So I've kind of got my thigh on the seat and I've got my leg dangling, which is a nice relief. I can stay there for a few miles and then hang off the other side and dangle your other foot. That's about it. You know, I suppose you could stand up for a while, but that's not very practical on the motorway, is it? But yeah, prevention's better than cure, and the leg dangles the way forward. If you've got a boxer engine, you can put your feet on the cylinder heads as well, which is quite nice. But maybe any of you lot have got any advice for dangling your leg or anything that helps your sore knees on a big trip. Thanks very much. Next is from A383W. Hi, thanks for the video. I have a question as I track off and on. Someone once told me to really know the limit of the bike, you have to crash. Is there any such thing to reach such a limit in safety? Well, thanks for your question. I'd say that no, you don't need to crash a bike to find its limit. I'd say if you're racing, then you have to ride very close to the limit, if not slightly over the limit, and crashes are inevitable. I wouldn't necessarily say you've got to crash to find the limit, because you know, a lot of racers won't crash all year, successful ones. So, you know, sometimes it's an occupational hazard of racing, crashing. But, you know, for track day riding, definitely not. You don't need to get your bike to the limit on a track day. You know, why would you? Why would you want to set a lap record time around a track day? You know, it's always good to keep a little bit of safety in reserve, and you can still have a great time. You know, on the track, you've got other riders. If you're trying to set fast laps, who's going to get in the way, and they're trying to enjoy their day. You're going to have cold tyres for the first few laps of a session because you've got to queue up before you get out. And really, yeah, track days aren't really the place to reach the limit. So, you know, rather than thinking about it, reaching the limit of your bike and crashing, think about it of just improving your riding. You know, if you get track tuition, then you won't really feel the need to ride the bike to the limit, because you might be riding the bike to the limit in the wrong way. So, you know, you may be doing a lap time on the verge of crashing, but you could go 10 seconds a lap faster in complete safety if you knew the technique. And, you know, I've banged on about it a lot of times before at the Haslam School. You know, with the right technique, you can get somebody going 20 seconds a lap faster than they were at the beginning of the day, in much more safety, because they're doing a different thing on the bike at a different point in the track. And that's something I teach with my one-to-one tuition as well. So yeah, definitely you don't need to crash your bike to find a limit. It's more a question of self-improvement and researching how best to go through corners on the track, and getting track tuition, whether it's at track days or track schools like the Jamie Whittam school, or anything in between. But yeah, keep your bike nice and shiny. Thanks very much for your question. Next is from Dave Clarkson, 5519. Hi Michael, great series of videos. Please keep them coming. Thank you very much. My question, if for some reason you decided to take early retirement and therefore no longer had access to all the press bikes, etc., and MCN said you could pick any of your long-term test bikes to keep as a parting gift, which would it be? Cheers, Dave. Well, yeah, I'm not thinking of taking early retirement, because I love what I do, obviously. Nothing to do with not being able to afford it. If I had access, an MCN wouldn't give me a a bike. I'll be lucky to get a little toy bike. But I see what you mean. I would say that the two that really stick out in my mind that I think I've already kind of got one, my own GSX-R 750, so I don't need one of them. I've got an S1000RR race bike, so I don't need one of them, and I've got a T-Max, so I don't need one of them. So the two that stick out would be my S1000R BMW, the latest generation one, which I did a video of last year. That was fantastic. That does absolutely everything you want out of a bike. If you love sports bikes, but also you like traveling as well, that ticks all the boxes. And the KTM 1390 Super Duke R Evo that I had last year, again, I could do absolutely everything on that bike. Neither of those two I think are particularly good looking, and I'd never sit and stare at it for hours over a cup of tea in the garage. But in terms of a tool for the job of having fun or touring or just going to the shops and back, those two bikes I'd really love. And you know, talking to KTM with all the mess that's going around them at the moment, I really hope they succeed, because at the end of the day they do produce some fantastic bikes. So yeah, if anyone could have a word with MCN and sort that out for me, I'd be very grateful. But thanks very much for your question. Next is from Stero 7619. So this is a longie. Hi Michael, I have a more mental, physiological question rather than technical. I would really appreciate your input, since I feel like stuck. Been doing regular track days in Catalonia in Spain for the last 6 years. Lucky you. And I barely hit the road if there's no guest or girlfriend sitting on the rear. I like to go 6 to 8 track days a year depending on availability, mainly in Montmello and Castelloni. I don't know that, Castiglione. Recently changed from Super Duke to a Panigale, and my times have got slightly slower or equal. I never push too hard, so I've never achieved the fast group, and I'm stuck in the top of the medium group. Recently had a low side due to cold tyres and low grip, humid tarmac. I guess, yes, with the Panigale, the last thing I saw at the dashboard was pound symbols blinking. I was going really slow, but the accident was quite heavy for the bike, even though I went out without a scratch. Having done so many laps the last 6 years of this circuit, and that rainy day being slow feels quite lame and irresponsible to crash, since it was purely my fault. How do you handle emotionally, motivationally recovery from crashes, and how have you handled failures in the past? I can't believe you've never crashed. Right, and there's some nice things you said at the end, which I won't read out. But thanks very much for your question, and cheers and a hug from BCN back at you. Well, yeah, I definitely have crashed. I feel your pain. You know, I've crashed my own bikes before, as well as press bikes and racing bikes, and it's never nice. The first thing anyone thinks when they crash a motorbike, if it's not too serious, is their poor bike. You know, their pride and joy getting all scratched up, and how it's never going to look the same again, and how much it's going to cost, and all the faff that goes towards getting it right, you know, and the money side of things and all the rest of it. And then, yeah, if you're injured as well, it's a double whammy, isn't it? And I think things, because I ride so much, maybe it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit more think of crashing a little bit more clinically than kind of emotively. So on the road, for example, touch wood, I haven't crashed since 1994 when I had a massive accident, and in my MCN career I haven't crashed on the road. It's basically prevention rather than cure. I do everything in my powers not to crash in the first place. So, you know, we've spoken about all those things before, and that goes from state of mind, that goes from riding corners in a certain way, body position in a certain way, and everything in between. I think if I did crash on the road and, you know, something absolutely came out of nowhere and knocked me off, or I slipped on some gravel or something like that, which is all easily done, then it might make me nervous for a little while. But I think the bottom line is if you know why you've crashed, then it's very helpful. You just know not to do it again, basically, which sounds easier said than done. But if you can look at it in kind of quite a clinical black and white way, you know, this happened because that happened. If I don't let that happen again, I won't crash, because I never did before. When it comes to track days, I've crashed track days. I've crashed a couple of times at MCN at launches and our own tests. And again, you know, there's a lot of embarrassment there. And yeah, it doesn't worry me, because I know why each crash happened. And when I've crashed racing, it absolutely doesn't bother you, because when you're racing, you've got that mindset that you just want to get out there and do it again and try and go even faster. So you've got this kind of very strange bloody mentality when you're racing, that regardless of how smashed up the bike is, you'll kick it straight. No matter how smashed up you are, you'll bandage yourself up and keep on going. So yeah, it's a very strange thing, and I've never worried about getting back on a bike again after crashing. Although having said that, having crashed a few times in the wet, I used to love the wet. I could win races quite easily in the wet because of confidence. I just, you know, I think it almost by chance I became good in the wet, because one day I did well in the wet, and then you kind of got that muscle memory to ride in a certain way, and then it always works, and you push harder and harder and harder. But towards kind of the end on my SLs and RI, I had a couple of big crashes in the wet, and that did make me slow down. But in the dry, it never worried me. I've had some biggies, you know, bad breaks, and I've always gone back. So, you know, my advice for you would be, if you know, well, you do know why you crashed. You had cold tyres, the track was wet, and yeah, riding those kind of conditions on a very stiff Panigale probably didn't help either. So yeah, easier said than done, but you've got to try and put it out of your mind and remember all the times that you didn't crash and life was rosy. And yeah, just study why it happened, make sure it doesn't happen again, and you should be okay. But thanks very much for your question, and I'm jealous that Catalonia is one of your local tracks, because I love that place. Right, this one is from Speedy. Hi Neezy, always waiting for your next video these days, best thing on YouTube, thank you very much. I enjoy listening to the tips and trying to understand them to try them out and improve my riding. My question is, if braking correctly, trail braking, etc., will I have more grip while I'm cornering if I have a closed throttle with no brakes? Or if I was using the front brake, which I think would load the tyre and push it into the road for more grip in some situations? And which is best for an unexpected corner or tightening closing corner? I think I'm right in thinking it would turn faster while using the front brake. This is a road riding question, by the way. Thanks a lot. Well, I think a little bit there. It sounds like you've been listening to things like the Matt Oxley, Peter Bond podcast, where you hear about MotoGP racers squashing the front tyre into a corner to increase the contact patch to give them more braking grip as they go in, which is true. But on a road bike, on road tyres, on the road, in road conditions, then you're not, that's not going to happen. So, you know, the basic premise with braking, if you simplify this completely, is that all the time you're completely upright, you can use full brakes, and all the time you're completely at lean, you can use no brake. And then that's the tricky thing. Trail braking is that balance between braking hard in a straight line, letting go of the brakes and turning in. And on track, and it never works for anybody, because even the best in the world lose the front and crash. You can reach the apex still braking to an extent, but it's a really dodgy game to play. On the road, braking in a straight line and with a tiny bit of lean is helpful, because it's not that the braking force is giving you more grip, it's that the braking force is making the bike steer a little bit faster and it's helping it turn into the corner. So that will kind of help you turn. But in terms of maximum braking power, really on the road, maximum braking power is in a completely straight line. So you'll come into a corner, you start to brake, you can brake very hard and start to bleed off the brakes as you lean in a little bit, and then you should have enough speed scrubbed off at that point to be able to completely let go of the brakes and then finish the corner off with no brakes, because you've done all your braking before the corner. If you're braking up to the apex on the road, then you're not leaving yourself any kind of safety margin at all. And, you know, in terms of the grip, you know, you always ride to the vision you've got on the road as well. You're not giving yourself that. So, you know, in simple terms, that's the case. So if braking correctly, it will have more grip while cornering if I have a closed throttle with no brakes. Well, yeah, you just basically do all your braking in a straight line before the corner and then close throttle and turn into the corner. So I think that's what you mean. If a corner unexpectedly tightens, then basically you're in emergency territory. So you're going to be forced to brake as the bike's leaning over. So you're running out of grip as you're doing that. So, you know, it's going to be more luck than judgment that you're going to get round. But you can really help the matter by dragging the back brake as well. So if you drag the back brake, and you know, a lot of people, including myself, use that as a technique anyway to hook the bike into the corner. So if you use the back brake, you'll actually help the bike turn. So if you are in that really precarious situation where the corner's tightening up, I would kind of just gently use both brakes to try and get yourself round, and hope that you've got a corner in ABS. But yeah, like everything, it's all about, especially on the road, preparation before you get to a corner. And then, you know, the cornering bit of the actual leaning bit of the corner should just be done with, you know, no brakes and a steady throttle. Shouldn't really be doing much in a corner other than just leaning over and turning the bike. All the heavy duty stuff is on the way in and the way out. That little cornering bit is that's the breathing bit, and that's what makes fast riders fast. They get in, they turn the bike, and they come out again. And you know, I've talked a lot about V lines, and I've had a bit of a conversation with some people talking about V lines on the road. Well, of course, V lines is a nuance. You're not, you know, and I use the analogy, you know, running up and down a sports hall and stopping at one end, coming the other. You know, that's what you do around a hairpin on the track. You go in, you'd fly in, you'd stop, you turn, and you come out. But then as corners change shape, you know, the V becomes more less of a V, less of a Ducati V, more of an Aprilia V or whatever, the other way around. That's a rubbish analogy, but anyway, but it's still kind of a V. You're still very slow at the apex. And yeah, another thing someone was saying is, well, they ride to their vision, which you should do. So they go into a corner kind of late and deep, see the exit and come out, which isn't strictly a V line, but there's still a point where you're straight lining it into the corner, where you can do all your braking upright. You're turning at your apex, wherever that is on the corner, wherever you choose it to be. And then once you've turned the bike, you can lift it up and then you can power. So always that apex speed should be really slow, so you can get the bike turned and it's nice and safe. I hope that answers your question, or it may just throw up more. Next is from Harry Long Camera. Hi Harry. An easy question for you. While I want to learn to ride faster, I always want to avoid hurting myself and potentially others and wasting thousands of pounds via a low side or a high side on a track day. The fear of this is definitely part of what leads to some of my pre-track day nerves, and maybe that's true for others too. It'd be great to feel as much excitement about a track day as possible, knowing that I've prepared as well as I can to avoid a crash. Would you be able to offer some general rules from bike preparation to riding tips on how to ride so as to minimise the chance of low siding and high siding? Obviously you can't stop someone from running into you, but you can control how you ride and prepare. Keen to hear your thoughts. A separate question would be what gear to get to protect yourself if the worst happens, but I feel the rule of the best you can afford, and ideally an airbag suit is probably what you'd say here, but let me know. Thanks for your help, Harry. But yeah, that's what I would say. Always wear the best kit you can, airbags, you know, they're worth their weight in gold. Thanks, Harry. I know Harry, he's done one of my one-to-one track tuitions at Snetterton, and fell in love with his GSX-R 750 as a result, and got a lot of his confidence back and set some really good lap times. Track days, yeah, I get the same anxiety about track days, you know, especially because I ride to most track days on a road bike, so the last thing I want to do is crash. You know, I did a track day at Spa last year. I rode there, did a day and a bit at Spa, went to the Nürburgring, rode that, and then rode back. If I'd have crashed, that would have absolutely screwed my whole trip up massively. So yeah, there are lots of things you can do to kind of mitigate your risk in terms of your bike preparation. You know, make sure you've got the correct tyres, make sure they're in good condition. You know, if you're using race compound tyres, you need tyre warmers, but I would recommend good track day tyres anyway that don't need tyre warmers, so you haven't got all the faff and hassle of worrying about plugging them in and getting your bike on the stand and waiting for the last possible moment till you go out on the track because your tyres are warm. You know, the good thing about track day tyres, like for example, like Supercorsa SPs or Diablo Rosso 4s, Corsa 4s, is that you go around track, no tyre warmers, couple of laps just to bring yourself up to speed, and you're good to go. And obviously make sure your bike is up to the job as well. Make sure you've got good brakes, good suspension, and everything in between. The rest of it is state of mind really, and rider skill, and knowing what to do at what point in the corner. You know, you can break it down into zones. You know, how you approach a corner, how you go through it, how you come out the other side. And I've spoken a lot about it. You know, everything about when to brake, when to let go of the brakes, off throttle cornering, what to do in the middle of the corner, and all the rest of it. So, you know, having the right way of riding is going to really kind of remove most of the risks, unless you're really unlucky and you hit some kind of, you know, fluid on the track, or, you know, part of somebody's bike, or someone bashes into you or whatever. But yeah, so I spend a lot of time on riding technique. So when I was at Spa last year, for example, I wasn't being too risky going into corners. So I was braking in a straight line going into corners at sort of an angle, and then getting to the apex quite slow, dropping it in and powering out the other side, which is also the fastest way to go into a corner. But it's very easy to slip into that kind of bad habit when you're around other riders and you try and catch them on the brakes, so you end up trail braking all the way to the apex. You do these wide U lines, and that's when you're at massive risk on the track. And yeah, the other thing on the track as well is, you know, when you're catching somebody on the track, the very fact you're catching them means that you're faster. So it's very tempting to try and get them on the brakes and put yourself under a massive risk. But the best way is to get past somebody, is to get close to them. So you've nibbled your way up to them, maybe follow them for a lap or so, and then through the corner in the straight where you think you might want to pass them, is to hang back and then go through that corner a little bit faster than they do, and then either get level with them down the next straight or a little bit ahead, and then it's very safe to overtake then. But yeah, I would say, yeah, it's easier said than done. Track days can be quite scary, quite intimidating. I think it's even worse now that there's this big discrepancy between the power of different bikes on track and the closing speed of faster bikes. You know, if you're in a fast group nowadays, you'll get a lot of racers practicing, which is really good fun when you see YouTube videos of a racer on their practice bike, but it's quite frightening when you're sharing a track with them and you're on a road bike. So yeah, it is a dodgy environment. You know, everyone tries to make it as safe as they can, including the track day organisers. But there's only so much you can do. Equally, that kind of risk is the thing that gives you a little bit of a thrill at the end of it when you've ridden home in one piece. And you know, it's a fantastic feeling. You just ride home slowly or drive home in your van, and you're like, oh, you got all that aggression out of you. You got the dopamine hits. It's amazing. So yeah, state of mind. You know, just ride your own track day. Preparation in terms of riding drills and what you do what on the bike, you know, again, it's very formulaic. You've got to take the emotion out of it. You've got to think of a track as a series of points where you brake at this point, you turn at that point, you corner at that point, you accelerate at that point. And that kind of helps get rid of some of the red mist, the right tyres and all the rest of it. So yeah, there's no real easy answer. You know, the Haslam school used to be good, almost kind of stress-free, because everybody was being instructed. There was no kind of free riding around the track, so it was very, very safe, which isn't the case on a normal open track day. But yeah, the more you do and the more you enjoy it, the easier they become, which I don't know if that actually answers your question, Harry, but make sure you get out on that GSX-R 750 again. Right, next is from STNLYKYK, Sticky Wick. Anyway, you've got Stanley on your picture there. Hi Neezy, could you talk about body position differences when leaning off on different bikes? I started out riding sports bikes, Ninja 400, GSX-R 600, CBR 600RR. I've been doing so for a few years. Now I'm on a naked street triple. I can't seem to find a body position that feels just right when leaning on the naked bikes, where it came quite naturally to me on sports bikes. Thanks for making these videos. No problem. I know exactly what you mean. The right body position on a race rep, it comes very naturally and it suits what you need to do on the track. You need to be able to tuck yourself in down the straights. So, you know, low bars help you with that. You need to be able to load the front going into the corners. So low bars help you do that. You can get right over the front. And in the middle of the corner when you're hanging off, low bars keep everything sort of nice and neat and in the right place. Nakeds aren't natural in that respect. And you do feel quite gangly on a naked. You know, your hands are up here. But kind of the same rules apply, but it never quite feels as natural, to be honest. So, you know, as long as you are leaning forward in the middle of the corner and leaning forward to bend your arms, so as long as you've got bent arms in the middle of the corner, your inside arm is really bent, so it feels like you can, if there's, say, an apex cone, it feels like you can actually nudge it with your elbow, even though you won't actually do it. And your outside arm is relatively straight, so you're over the front of the bike, you've got your elbow bent, and you'll be able to do that on a bike with straight bars. It just won't feel as natural as a race rep. So yeah, the body position is the same. There's no real tricks to riding a naked. You know, it's harder to get tucked in, obviously, you know, with the naked as well. Actually, there's something quite specific. It's very easy to get a naked wobbling down the straights, and you know, you've got the wind catching all the sticky out bits, and it makes the bike unstable. But quite often the rider makes it unstable as well, where they're hanging onto the bars and pulling the bars this way and that, and unintentionally getting the bike to weave. So, you know, down the straights, hold on as lightly as you possibly can, and that makes the bike really stable. And then when it comes to braking, you're kind of sitting up on the brakes, holding yourself up, mainly with your knees on the tank, but a little bit with your arms, so you can still keep your arms relatively bent and floppy. And then when it comes to coming off the brakes, you lean forward, get the inside arm bent, and off you go. Hope that helps. And finally, hooray, everybody says, is Mr. Iannuzzi. I live in the USA. Where and how can I buy this bike and get it delivered to the USA? Well, I think you're talking about the T-Max, which unfortunately our American friends don't get, which is a travesty. The simple answer is I don't know. I mean, the same is the opposite way around. You know, the GSX-R 750 you can buy in America and not here. And I wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to buying one, and all the documentation you need, and the taxes you have to pay, and the vehicle approval and all the rest of it. So maybe I can throw this one out to you lot, and to help Mr. Iannuzzi, maybe buy a T-Max in the UK and ship it over to America. So there you go. That was a longie. Thanks very much for hanging in there if you have. And I will see you on the next one.